This podcast is with my father, Mark Conrad. This was a lot of fun. I love having these conversations, and I'm glad to have a few of these now recorded. We discussed my father's life in his childhood, growing up in Pasadena and Arcadia, California. We discussed how my dad became mechanically inclined, his introduction to muscle cars and street racing in the late 60s and early 70s. We talked about how my father learned how to work with his hands by working in a machine shop as a young man going to college. We discussed in the 80s and 90s that my mother and father built homes and used the rental income and appreciation to pay their bills and provide for their retirement. My father talks about how he got started in the trucking industry. Unfortunately, we lost internet connection, and you'll be able to see that at the end of the podcast. We hope that we'll have another one of these conversations with my father soon. I hope you enjoy this podcast with Mark Conrad. Tell us about what it was like growing up. What year were you born? Where were you born? And what it was like?
Pasadena, 1952. The first thing I ever remember as a kid was they had a train. It was the last coal-burning train that the Santa Fe Railroad, they were going to retire it. And it was on a victory tour going to the scrapyard or wherever they were taking it. And I remember as a kid standing next to this old black train engine and all the steam that comes off the wheels, and and the thing is huffing and puffing. And so that's the first memory first thing I can remember as a kid. And I don't know what year that was, but I'm sure I was pretty young.
Like it was like 55 or something?
Maybe it was like Carson. It might have been Carson's age.
3 years old.
Because there's not a lot of other things around that time that I remember. Mm-hmm. Other than that, that's just kind of a...
And that train was coming through Pasadena or Arcadia or something?
It was coming through the Pasadena train station over on Arroyo.
Okay, so so that train was probably 75 or 100 years old, maybe.
Could have been. Who knows?
Yeah,
I have no idea. But they were going to go to diesel electric trains from then on out. And this was the last coal burner that the Santa Fe had. So anyway, that's the first memory.
Okay, yeah.
Beyond that, it's just the usual stuff. You remember I remember going to kindergarten.
Okay.
And, just running around with a bunch of kids acting stupid. Just what kids do.
And so at this time, you guys were living in Pasadena?
Yeah.
Okay.
I lived in Pasadena for the first 10 years of my life.
Okay, first 10 years.
Yeah, and then we moved to Arcadia.
Okay.
And I lived there for the next 10 years.
Why did you guys move? What do you think the reasoning was?
The school district, the city of Pasadena, their policies became very racially motivated. Mm-hmm. They did what they did was they did racial blending.
Yeah.
And instead of having neighborhood schools that had kids from the neighborhood, what they did was they
mixed them up.
They mixed them up, and they bused kids from one side of Pasadena to the other side of Pasadena. The city of Pasadena was one of the first school districts to bus and do racial blending. And 20 years later, after it failed, it was the last school district in the nation to bus people for racial blending.
Yeah, so that would have been 62. 62. No, I'm saying 62, you guys moved back. You moved to Arcadia.
About 64, 65, someplace in there.
Okay.
Well, let me see. No, you're right. So it would have been 62. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, the world was so different then, if you think about it from a racial standpoint, right? From 1952 to 62, compared to what it is now, right? From a racial standpoint. I mean, the 60s, that's when Martin Luther King was doing his thing.
Oh yeah, this was This was a grand experiment that they were doing, and this was going to solve all our race problems, because all the kids are going to grow up in a blended society, and it's all going to be love. It's a love fest.
Like more people would be more acceptable is what the thought process was.
Yeah, you would learn, you would know more about people of color.
Yeah.
So, but it didn't work.
Sure.
And it cost them a lot of bus fuel.
Right.
Because you had hundreds of kids going across town to go to a different school. That was another thing that happened was, well, I'm trying to think here. Some of those schools were pretty run down. I don't know why.
Were they busing people from higher income places to lower income also?
Oh yeah.
So it was a two-way blend.
Oh yeah. It was the buses were passing each other.
Yeah. So anyway, okay. Okay. So anyway, I asked you a question about Pasadena, Arcadia, but let's go before 10. What do you remember? What was it like? What do you remember? Doing 5, 6, 7, 8 years old that you really enjoyed, or something that comes to mind?
Oh, well, you mean just like hanging around in the neighborhood?
Yeah, whatever it was.
What do you have? All brothers?
Yeah.
How many of you are there?
3 of us.
See, are you the oldest, middle, youngest?
I'm the middle.
Okay.
But we were pretty spread out. My older brother's 10 years older than I am.
Okay.
And my younger brother's 6 years younger than I am.
So 16 between the oldest and the youngest.
Right. And so the way that when you get a gap like that, you don't have a lot in common with your brothers.
Yeah.
So we didn't play like these guys do. When you have an older brother who's 10 years older than you, so by the time, let's say I'm 5, he's 15.
Yeah, you're completely different stages of life.
He's in high school. I'm just starting school, and so we didn't really, we didn't have any brotherly interaction, so to speak. I spent way more time with Kurt growing up than I did with my older brother.
Kurt's your younger brother?
Yeah.
Yep.
Mm-hmm. But anyway, hanging out. What did we do? I had a neighborhood kid right across the alley, Wayne Leisher. I don't know whether you recognize him.
I know the name, but yeah.
Yeah, he was born like a month after me, and so we were pretty much, when we were growing up, for that first 10 years, we were pretty much inseparable.
Yeah. You lived a block from each other or something.
Yeah, we used to, kind of run the neighborhood, and in summer times we'd go out and steal fruit out of all the neighbors' trees.
Would you eat it, or what would you do with it?
Oh yeah, if somebody had a plum tree, we'd wait. We knew when they were going to be ripe, and we'd be up in that tree eating plums.
Or
if it was a peach tree,
Well, that's interesting, right? Because Pasadena was an agriculture city, and it was at that point in time it had been transitioned to a city more than an agriculture. Area.
The cities around Pasadena were more agricultural. Arcadia was all agriculture.
Well, what I'm saying, yeah,
in some parts of Pasadena, but that was early on. Not when there wasn't agricultural when I was growing up.
Right.
So it's
what's the population in Pasadena in the 50s?
120.
In the 50s?
I mean, it hasn't changed. It's about the same. It's a city that it has nowhere to grow. There's very little. There's not like you can build a tract of homes. There's an occasional, vacant lot here and there, but there's not a lot of construction in Pasadena back then.
I wonder, LA County, how much has that population changed in?
Huge. Huge. Big difference. LA County's a relatively large county. And a lot of the surrounding cities, they had more room to grow because some of the cities were a lot younger. So, but anyway, yeah, you're just doing kid shit, whatever kids do. I don't think what I did with the neighborhood kids. And I had a girl who lived next door. Her name was Lynn. She was about the same age, and I mean, that's just like the Brooks.
Yeah.
I mean, those were who you played with, and we kind of did similar things.
Yeah.
I know you guys, you played hide and seek and stuff like that. Well, we did the same thing.
Right.
It was a good atmosphere. It was a good neighborhood to grow up in.
Yeah.
They just the only reason they would have stayed there. It was it was nice. It was a reasonably big house, and we didn't need to move. Because there wasn't the family weren't growing out of the
Right.
out of the house. It was strictly education. And my dad was he was somewhat of a racist.
Yeah.
Yeah. He wanted the best for his kids, and regardless of what it was, and he just didn't feel it was a good. And I don't think it was so much about the color of people's skin or the race. He just thought, that sort of a deal was. Is if it's the same thing with any education. If you take really smart kids and put them with really dumb kids, let's say,
yeah, it dilutes the whole.
It dilutes the whole thing and makes everybody average.
That's right. So he didn't want to.
And the problem with that is you teach to the lowest level to educate people, and some people are just naturally bright.
Sure.
And so that's something that they were trying to avoid.
Yeah, I get it. Okay, so what was it like? Did your mom work at that time?
No, she was a stay-at-home mom.
She never worked.
She worked Christmas time. At Christmas, she worked at a couple of different department stores.
Okay.
I don't know why. Maybe it was just to get extra money for Christmas gifts. I don't know. But she would work like a month.
Okay.
The month of December, or maybe from Thanksgiving. Oh, I know what she used to, from about Thanksgiving when people start shopping, to up to Christmas. She used to do that.
Yeah. Okay.
But I don't remember. The interesting thing about that is, I don't remember her being gone. You know what I mean?
You mean like
I don't remember her actually physically going to work, and her being gone during the day.
Yeah.
When I was young. So I don't know. I don't know how she pulled that off.
Okay.
That makes sense. Even now, UPS hires twice as many workers essentially from Thanksgiving to Christmas because there's just so much more shopping and employment demand.
Mm-hmm.
What did your father do?
He managed an office building.
Okay.
That primarily had a Pacific Bell phone company offices in Pasadena. That started in the 60s too, and eventually it was a mixed. It was just a regular office building. You could have anything in it, from a lawyer to a dentist would be in the building. But as time went by, as space became available, the phone company took it over. And it was a 6-story building, and by the time the phone company left, they had 5 floors that was phone company, and only basically 1 floor that was other. Actually, they had 6 floors, but in the end, and only the basement had a different company in it, down in the office, down in the basement. But yeah, he was, and he also, because of it was from a construction background. They when they remodeled, he was the job site superintendent.
Okay.
And there was a couple of different companies that he would use to do the actual work. But I mean, they would gut out a whole floor for the phone company and put in everything new, cubicles, type of workspace for the phone company.
Yeah, take all the walls down, whatever, put up new walls.
Right.
Run all brand new electrical and.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and there was an older building. It was built in 1906. And so by the time you get to 1960, and like I say, that the building was, needs change,
Yeah, I mean, 60
companies.
years of, I don't care what building it is, 60 years of different tenants and remodels. There's going to be a lot of different stuff going on in that building.
Yeah, it was one of the first steel frame buildings, I-beam buildings in Pasadena.
Yeah,
then it was brick, but the actual frame was I-beam.
Yeah. Okay. So it wasn't built out of lumber.
Right. Well, the interesting thing about that story is when the phone company bought the entire block next to this building. It was my dad's building. It's called the Royal Seco building, and they bought the block next door, which had a little bit larger building that they demolished. And I remember when they took that building down, the size of the lumber beams that was in that building. I mean, the beams were like this and like this, and 40 feet long. I mean, it was a whole tree basically that they built into dimensional lumber. I mean, it was just, some of the stuff was just huge. And then I could understand what my dad was saying when his building was, I-beam, and it's riveted together, not welded, but all the joints, everything's riveted, as compared to a big building like that would have a lot of wood beams in it. It was pretty interesting to watch that building come down.
Yeah, well then now you're getting me going down a rabbit hole.
I was gonna say
the beam depth, right, from like floor to floor height would have been way bigger. You see what I'm saying? Compared to steel.
No, I don't know what you're saying.
Okay, so the depth of a beam, right? Like, so the ceiling depth, right?
Oh, the ceiling
would have been 20. Let's just say 24 inches. Versus an I-beam that has the exact same amount of strength would have been 8 or 10 inches.
Yeah.
So you would have saved 10 inches on every single floor as you built the building.
Oh, I see what you're saying.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
So that's interesting because, anyway, I won't go down that rabbit hole, but you can put a lot of shit in a 24-inch deep, ceiling bay versus a 10-inch one. It's kind of hard to put a bunch of shit up there.
Right. Yeah.
Duct work and
yeah. Well, most of it was, by the end, it was all drop ceilings in it.
Yeah.
Because they just didn't need the space. Yeah. That building had, God, here we go. That building originally, it was designed, it was a bank building.
Okay.
And on the first floor, it had the Pasadena, I don't know, Federal Bank or whatever they call them, but it doesn't make any difference. But that was also during the recession in 1929. Depression. In 1929, it was like the first bank in California to go under. But it was fun because I saw the vaults. It had 3 vaults. It had 2 vaults. Had 1 vault at the street level, and then it had 2 vaults down in the basement. And I don't know, just kind of interesting to see these old vaults.
Kyle, you should take Mark and Gala up to the bank bar next time they're in Montana.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bar restaurant about 45 minutes kind of north of Bozeman, and it's called the Bank Bar. It's got the old bank vault still in there. It's just a cool, probably 100+ year old building.
Yeah. Okay, so your dad coached your baseball teams, didn't he?
No,
He did not.
no, he did not.
I thought.
We played. We played baseball. Practice, coach,
Yeah.
and played catch. But no, it was always something. He couldn't get away Monday through Friday
from work.
Yeah, he left the house at 7:30 and he came home at 6:30.
Okay.
And so he didn't have the time to be a little league coach.
Right.
Because you have to have a couple practices a week.
Yeah.
And then he could have he helped out a little bit on weekends.
Yeah.
With the teams. But anyway. So,
Mark, did you do a lot of work with him that he did on this building?
I worked summers for him, more in a maintenance capacity.
I don't know if that's where you picked up some of your construction knowledge.
We did quite a bit of painting, cleaning, but
back when maintenance people did all kinds of maintenance shit. Maintenance people and buildings don't do maintenance anymore. They call another company to do maintenance.
They call a plumber now.
Right.
Yeah, and then you used to, we did a lot of plumbing, repair work, fixing, leaky faucets, changed out a lot of light bulbs, did a lot of painting and cleaning, and what else? Just whatever it took to get to keep the satisfied tenants.
When did your dad take that job? Because before that, he was doing something else.
What he did was he was involved with the family business, and they did concrete work in the Pasadena area.
So did he make that transition out of the family business to that when you were a kid, or did by the time you were born he had already made that transition?
They had a disagreement in how the business was run. It was him and his three brothers and my grandfather, and he just, it's just like a lot of family businesses. There's a lot of disagreement. There can be. It doesn't all run smoothly like these people across the street. That's like a cult over there. But so my dad was unhappy. He felt he was overworked and underpaid for what he did. He went to work for a few years, and this is when what I remember is he worked at the what was the name of that place?
The Wrigley?
No, that was my grandfather when he first moved here from North Carolina. He worked at the Wrigley Mansion, which is now the Tournament of Roses Association's headquarters. But anyway, he worked the women's. No, it was the men's. Oh, no, anyway, he was an assistant building manager for a while, and then he quit that job to take this job and run this building for the company.
Uh-huh.
And he worked there for 17 years.
So he worked for the owner of the building or something?
He worked for the company. I think they were a corporation.
Uh-huh.
They had a number of office buildings. Most of them were in the Bay Area, San Francisco. But anyway, he did that for 17 years. And then the phone company built their building, moved out. And my mom and dad thought it was a good time to go to Oregon.
Mm-hmm.
Because the building was going to get sold. It ended up getting sold to Parsons Engineering.
Mm-hmm.
He could have kept that job, but my mom talked him out of it because they own the property in Oregon, and they decided it was time to semi-retire.
Sure.
And build their house in Oregon. So that's what they did.
Okay.
So,
how old are you when they moved?
I was about 21 years old.
And then you've got a younger brother, right? How old is he?
He was in high school.
Okay. So did he go with them?
He started high school in Oregon.
Okay.
Yeah, he went with them. I stayed behind.
What was the relationship? So they did concrete work. They did Uncle Johnny work for that same company?
Yeah, he did.
So so all of Uncle Johnny's stories about doing concrete all over Pasadena and LA, and even he had stories about going over to Catalina Island and doing concrete work.
Right.
So that was the family business went over there, or Johnny did himself?
No, the family business went over there.
What were they doing over there?
William Wrigley bought that island in 1950. He owned every inch of that island. And he and there was a small, well, he didn't own,
like Wrigley gum.
There's one square mile that he didn't own, and that was the city of Avalon over there.
Okay.
And that couldn't expand. He owned the rest of that island. And basically, and that was my grandfather and his brother was working at the Wrigley Mansion when he bought that place over there, and then he started doing stuff over there, building stuff.
Okay, so.
And they ended up going over there and working for him on the island. My dad lived there for 5 years in his 20s.
Yeah,
he worked in the nursery there. That his uncle for his uncle. They grew plants. I mean, they had their own nursery on that island.
Sure.
But anyway, I think we're off track again.
No, it's fine.
We jumped from 10 years old to with my parents my dad going to Catalina. But I guess it was that was a great time. He says that was the best time of his life, was living on Catalina in his 20s.
Mm-hmm.
He ended up
then.
He basically got drafted into the Army just before World War II started, off the island. The draft notice came to my grandmother in Pasadena, and she called over to the island and said, "Hey, Larry, I just got your draft notice in the mail."
Mm-hmm.
They were ramping up for war. So so he basically got taken off the island, and for 4.5 years he was in the Army.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, now we're definitely off track.
Well, I asked about your building knowledge because we're looking at the garage you built last summer.
Yeah.
So I was just wondering where that came from, or just a lifetime of knowledge.
No, just working for my dad in the summertime. I used to work Christmas too. You know, when you were off school for like 2 weeks, he'd make me go to work with him. Mm-hmm. Keep me busy.
Let's go back to your childhood. So let's go back to
go to school. You mean?
Yeah. Like, what was it like? I mean, I guess what were you doing at 13, 14, 15 years old?
You said baseball. You played baseball through high school?
No, I didn't play through high school. I played through 9th grade.
What position did you play?
Which was still part of middle school. 9th grade at that time. 10th grade and up was high school. I didn't play. I played football for 1 year in high school.
Keep going.
No, I'm thinking. I'm trying to figure out what exact question you were trying to get out of me.
He was asking what position you played in baseball.
Oh, I played second base and short when I was younger, and then shortstop. And then when I was older, in junior high school, they played me at third base, and I was okay. I was a good fielder, but a lousy hitter. That was my weakness. I think I know why now.
Why?
But it took a while. I didn't track.
It's a little late.
Yeah, it's a little late. No. I realized it after the fact that I wasn't properly tracking the ball and watching it hit the bat.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't watching the ball. They even told me I was pulling my head. And you go like this. You swing and
Yeah, you're looking up before they even make contact.
Before you make contact. And you don't make good contact doing that, especially when somebody's throwing curveballs at you.
Yeah.
So I wasn't a good hitter. And now that I think about it, because a lot of times if you're tracking the ball and you see it hit the bat, you know where the ball went, right?
You're kind of ahead of yourself. You're trying to look where the ball went before you hit it.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And when I did make contact, I'd take off running, and I really didn't know where I hit the ball.
You didn't know if it went down.
I don't know whether it was a fly. I don't know whether it was a fly ball. All I knew is I had to get to first base, and so I don't know whether it was a grounder to the shortstop or a blooper to left field or center field. I had no idea because I wasn't watching the frickin' ball.
Yeah.
So anyway, that was my Achilles heel for baseball. Then I played 3 years of football. I played in 8th grade, Pop Warner, and then 9th grade for Foothills Junior High School, and then sophomore at Arcadia High School. And I quit that because I wasn't big enough. It's not good. When I entered high school, I was at about 112 pounds. And that's not and
then when you exited, you were 145.
Yes. So you grew a lot, in 3 years.
Yeah, but you're still 145. If you think about it.
Yeah, when I was playing Pop Warner, there was a minimum and a maximum weight. And that was 8th grade. And I had some guy, and maximum in that size was 140 pounds. And they loaded me up with water to get me over 100 pounds. And I weighed in at I forget what I weighed in, but I couldn't even practice that day. They stuck so much water in me so I could make the team.
You drank gallons
to
of water.
make weight. And that was the best football experience I had because that was a really good team. And that was like kids came from out of area to play on that team. And I wouldn't have ever made it. But the guy worked with Larry, my brother, at the phone company. The coach did.
Okay.
And he had played. I don't know whether he'd played professionally, but I know he played in college. He was a punter, among other things. You couldn't believe that guy could stand on one side of the field and punt the ball all the way across the field, and it would strike out of bounds on the other side. That's over 50 yards of punt. I mean, that's pro stuff. And he would stand around while he's coaching the team, and he'd be punting the ball, and he'd have subs, not during games, but during practice, chasing balls down.
Go get the balls.
Get the balls. But the kids that I played with, unbelievable players. 3 or 4 of them played pro for a number of years. I remember the best player. He was a fullback. He was a running back. He played for the San Francisco 49ers for 7 years. But just like anything else, most of those players don't play that long anyway. 7 years is a pretty good career. Kermit Johnson, you could look him up. He was a badass dude. Boy, he was a son of a bitch to tackle.
I'm trying to... Are these like the old school helmets with one bar around the face of them?
Pretty much. Yeah.
No pads, pretty much.
Oh, Jesus. Get the shit kicked out of you. That's the reason why I quit. I just couldn't take the beating. I wasn't big enough. I mean, and I wasn't fast, But I just.
When did you quit playing football in Junior year of high school?
No, sophomore year.
Sophomore year of high school. Okay.
C football. Paratori. I don't know whether that name.
Yeah, I've heard the name before.
Yeah, he was the coach.
Joe Paratori.
Fred
Paratori. Okay, so sophomore year of high school, that's when you started to get into cars.
I didn't get my car until a junior.
Yeah, but I'm saying
I had to save some money to get my car.
How did you kind of get into that stuff?
What was your first car?
The 66 GTO.
Nice.
I wish I had it right now. Wish I had every car I ever owned.
Well, if your boys would do some work, maybe they'd track them down for you and get them for you.
Yeah, probably ended up in the junkyard.
Yeah.
But yeah, that was a fun car. $1,300. What I paid for it.
Mm-hmm.
What did that thing have for a motor transmission?
It's a 389 cubic inch, and it's a 365 horsepower, and it was a 4-speed.
365 horsepower back then.
That's what I was going to say. Yeah,
it was.
Yeah, that's a lot of horsepower.
Yeah.
That's in.
It was a big block Chevy. Was big block Chevy and the big Chryslers were the only things that were better.
Yeah.
It was still a great. It was a really good engine.
But I mean,
Pontiac actually at that time had the best heads. Those heads on those, and they even use Pontiac style heads today, or they used to. I don't know. You kept hearing about them. They put them on Chevys. They were never made. It was just the way the domes were made, and the port angles and the spark plug angles were. That's what they mean by Pontiac styled heads. But anyway, how did I get started in that? I don't know. Larry was into cars.
Yeah.
I saw those. He's 10 years older than me. He had great cars. He probably wished he had all his cars that he had.
What kind of cars did Larry have?
His first car was a 1954 Ford Skyliner. Half the top was plexiglass. Oh, yeah. The front half was plexiglass.
Like a moonroof kind of thing.
Yeah, only it was tinted.
Yeah, those cars look like they almost look like a 57 Chevy.
Yes.
Yeah, but they're
similar.
Yeah, they look like a 57 Chevy, but they're big like that. And then, but it had a that kind of moonroof thing. Yeah. That's a fucking cool car.
Yeah, but the engine, Ford engines weren't that good. Yeah. The Y blocks were not that good, and that was the problem with that car. Then he moved on. The next car he ordered from the factory, a 64 Ford Custom 300 with a 427 and a 4-speed, and that was 425 horsepower.
Damn.
And that car was originally designed for stock car racing. It was a bare bones.
It was called a Ford 300?
Custom 300. And there was nothing special about it. It was basically a Galaxy with, he's lucky to, I think the only option he got on that because the engine was a radio. And he had a heater in it. But the interior, it had red interior, cloth interior. I thought the interior was ugly, and it was black. That car was black. It was a good looking car if you like big Fords.
Mm-hmm.
Then his next car was a GTO. That's kind of why I ended up getting a GTO, because he had one.
Yeah.
So anyway.
Was he wrenching on those things a lot too?
Not really. He did a lot of maintenance. He did the maintenance on them, but not a lot of wrenching.
Mm-hmm.
It wasn't something that he got into. My dad wasn't a big wrencher either. He did maintenance, change oil, stuff like that. But if it needed something mechanically done, they went into the shop.
Your brother in Oregon does a lot of that stuff, doesn't he?
Yeah.
because that's where you guys did the motor in your
Right.
truck.
Right.
He's your older brother, or you're younger?
Younger.
Okay.
Yeah, right. I think I had a lot of friends. We used to do a lot of street racing,
Mm-hmm.
and I had a lot of friends, and that's where I got my wrenching
Hey, Dad.
experience. We
Dad,
would actually
pull the mic just a little closer to you.
okay.
There you go.
We were we would help each other. Like if Steve Jones, Chris Callan and I put the headers on Steve Jones while he was working at Ralph's. You know, he just turned over his car to us.
And you guys worked on it.
Yeah, we worked on it and then drove it down uncorked.
Yeah, because for all that stuff, for most of that stuff, you need two people to do anything really.
Yeah. You know, so we just sometimes we'd be out at midnight on weekends working on the car in the garage. Hopefully we weren't pissing the neighbors off, but sometimes we were.
Who the hell was just? I don't know if it was us talking to us or somebody else, or if you were you the one telling us about street racing?
I don't know. I
don't know if Kyle was telling me you used to street race.
Yeah.
What was he saying? You would race for like $20 or something, or
we'd race for nothing. But yeah, $20 was big money. And and usually when you did that, $20 was a lot of money to me, and I didn't want to lose it. So usually, when it got to that point, I figured I could win. And
were you saying would you put slicks on when you would go to race or not?
Yeah, I had slick.
Nice. So you guys were just drag racing somewhere on public streets?
Yep. And I used to. I mean, if I was gonna race, I'd go home and put on the slicks and change the spark plugs.
Oh, you changed the spark plugs too, so it'd be running great.
Yeah, I had a friend that had a sandblaster at his shop, and I had about 5 or 6 sets of spark plugs, and I'd bead blast them. But the car, which you could tell the difference after driving that car a week.
It ran significantly different.
It wasn't running
responsive.
Well, it wasn't running as well. So basically, if I was going to race it, I'd change out the plugs.
Yeah.
So anyway.
And the bead blaster just knocked off all the residue off the plug.
Yeah, off. Just clean them up. Because we were actually you're running that car a little bit more fuel than you're supposed to for normal day in day out driving. But when you're on it, you're using that fuel. Yeah, it was. We were hard on those cars. Not so much the GTO, but when I went to the Nova, I had a couple of times. I mean, I stretched. You end up stretching the transmission cases. Drag racing the thing.
How do you do that?
Well, it's an aluminum case and it stretches, and so what would happen is all the gears are on shafts, and it would pop out of gear, and it's because the case got stretched. So what you'd have to do is,
how did the case get stretched though?
Just torque.
So because I guess it's bolted, right? And then the drive shaft's like yanking on.
No, it's inside.
Yeah, inside. Okay.
On all these shafts, there's 2 shafts in there with a bunch of gears on it. But anyway, so you'd have to take the transmission apart and shim it. Basically, you'd put washers on those shafts and tighten it back up. And that happened to that car twice. I blew the rear end out of it once. Grenaded it just like I did on the Camaro. When you were young, pretty young.
Why do you think that happened?
What, to blow the rear end?
Yeah, because the gears get locked on each other and then they just snap, or what?
No, it's just power shifting, or just basically abuse. When you got a set of slicks on the car, and you stab the gas pedal and dump the clutch, there's a severe strain on the entire drivetrain.
Yeah, you're basically slamming everything together.
Oh yeah, I mean, and it's violent. You know, everything that's going on in that rear end and what's happening in that transmission, it's violent.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's what breaks stuff. That's both times I blew the rear ends out. It was dumping the clutch.
Yeah.
What was that race culture like? Would there be a lot of people showing up for these races?
Some of it, yeah.
Pretty big.
Yeah, there were certain places where people gathered in Southern California for this sort of thing, and they do street takeovers now, but back then, you know, there was just certain places, and the cops would hear that, you know, once people were congregating in these.
That's what I was going to say. The law enforcement must have.
Yeah, but a lot of it was just meet someplace and then race someplace else. So, and another thing, you went out of area too because you would be known around your local area. You and your car would be known, and so you know who could beat who, and so there wasn't a lot of mystery to it. So you had to go out of your own area to find
somebody to race
fresh meat.
And I guess nobody really knows what anyone's running, whether anything's aftermarket or stock. As far as the car,
none of this stuff was stock.
Yeah,
and everybody's car was modified to some extent.
If you heard the thing running, you could figure it out.
Oh yeah, well, a lot of times
more. I mean, I would think in most cases you would. And are you looking underneath the hood of somebody else's car a lot, or are you?
Well, you'd ask if you were thinking about racing, you'd say, yeah, you know, he looks under your hood, you look under his.
Yeah.
I mean, it's pretty you know, you're limiting yourself if you're not looking under the hood. If you know, of course, somebody could refuse, you know.
Sure.
But that didn't, you know. Yeah, we used to we closed down sections of the freeway to race. But between off ramp to next off ramp.
Yeah.
We'd use other cars would block the freeway.
Yeah,
in the middle of 2 in the morning.
They go out and
we'd go up on the
hold up the rest of the.
No, you know, you have a 4-lane freeway. You'd go up the on ramp, a whole bunch of cars, block the freeway. The two would just set up right out in front. It'd just take a minute. Set up the two. It's all planned. Set the two cars up. By the time it takes you to set up, all the traffic has moved a minute down the freeway.
Mm-hmm.
And then you just set those two cars off. And then at the next off ramp, you get off. So,
yeah,
we did that a few times.
Probably can't get away with that too much these days.
Well, I don't see why not. No, I mean, nothing's really changed. There's not any more cops than there were. But it's you get in a lot more trouble now. The penalties for that sort of stuff is pretty nasty.
I was going to say they're pretty high.
You can lose your car,
and probably your license pretty quick too.
Oh sure, yeah. It's yeah, you're really, you know, you're putting a lot on the line doing that sort of thing.
Mm-hmm.
But what were you doing in high school? Were you working when you were in high school at all, or just summers? You said summers with your father.
Yeah.
Were you working much? What'd you do when you got out of high school for work?
Then I went to Pasadena City College.
Okay.
And I did janitor work late afternoons and evenings for spending money.
This is when you're in high school or after high school?
After high school.
Okay.
What were you doing in high school? What were you working?
I was just working for my dad in the summertime. I wasn't working.
Okay.
During the week.
Okay. And then so at PCC you were working and going to college.
Yeah.
And then your parents moved to Oregon.
Yeah.
Okay. Then what?
Right when I graduated from PCC.
Okay. Then what? They moved to Oregon.
They moved to Oregon,
and
I was planning on going to Cal State LA.
Okay.
And that plan kind of got shot down, and they moved to Oregon.
Yeah.
Because I was, well, what I had wanted to do is I wanted to become a cop.
Okay.
And they moved to Oregon, and I worked. Then I went to work full time.
What were you doing at that time?
I worked at because through my janitor job, I met the manager of this business that was Gould Electronics down in El Monte. And I guess he liked my work, and he says, well, if I ever wanted the job, come see him. And so when my parents decided to move to Oregon, I took him up on it.
Okay.
And I worked in the machine shop.
You're making parts.
Yeah, making parts for, they used to have measurement. They used to make electronic measurement. It's the first place I ever saw like what a compact CD is, right? Well, this was back in the early 70s, and the things were about this big around. It was about the size of a vinyl record.
Yeah.
And they were about this thick. And what was weird about it, and they had a mirror polish to them, but there's all kinds of information on that thing.
Yeah.
And that concept just blew my freaking mind, that there's actually information on the face of that thing.
Yeah.
There was actually grooves that you couldn't see in there.
Right.
Just like a compact disc has.
Well, and just like a record.
Well, yeah, only you could see the grooves in a record.
Right.
In a vinyl record. But anyway, I did that job, and then I worked for about 4 years. And then that company closed that facility, and they consolidated to Cleveland, Ohio. And I didn't want to go there. So a high school friend of mine had his dad had a machine shop over in Monrovia. They made aircraft parts. So
okay. So hold on.
I moved over to there.
By that time, you're not at PCC anymore.
No.
Right. And so,
I'm working full time.
Okay, you're working full time. Okay, got it.
Mm-hmm.
And then you go over to make aircraft parts.
Yeah.
What was that company's called?
It was over near where Airtro is.
Yeah.
South of Duarte.
Uh-huh. And
they made aircraft parts for all the big companies.
Yeah. Northrop Grumman and all that.
Right. A lot of it you didn't know who you were working for.
Yeah.
North American, Rockwell,
Lockheed Martin.
Right. We made parts for the landing gear for the B-1 bomber. And I didn't know that until 5 years after I was there, or even longer.
Okay.
That's what we were making the stuff for. And because that was a top secret aircraft. They were, it was the B-1 bomber and the B-2 bomber and then the stealth bomber. And all that shit was, that stuff was all hidden from everybody.
How long did you work there?
A couple of years.
Okay.
And to back up a little bit, my parents moved to Oregon. I had a choice of, either go out and find an apartment and live. You figured that's how or try to get
you were 21 years old going to college.
Well, I was just finishing college, and so I had a choice. I was going to buy a new car at that point, and then they announced they were going to Oregon, and I didn't want to go. So it's find an apartment or buy a house. And my parents kind of steered me into buying the house.
Yeah.
They lent me some money, and I put the money that I was going to use for the new car for the down payment on the house. Big money, $17,000.
The house?
Yeah.
Or the loan?
I had a loan. Yeah, it was.
Wait, the whole house was 17 grand?
Oh, it was 21.5. But it was 16 or 17,000 was a loan on it. $153 a month.
So hold on. You bought a house for 20 something grand?
Exactly.
And then
2,000 square feet, two bedrooms.
We're gonna go down this rabbit hole.
You remember I told you this morning it'd be fun to have the conversion of how much money equivalent that is today.
What's interesting to me is well, I guess you kind of can, right? So you can buy $100,000 truck today, or you could buy a $400,000, $400,000 or $500,000 house. Because that's basically what you're saying. The cars back then were about $3,500 new.
New Corvette was $4,500.
Okay, but that was
you could get a Ford Cobra for $6,500.
That's a lot. Yeah. Okay. So then,
that was just your head would pop. Like a Corvette for $4,500. Yeah. Shit, I don't have any money like that.
Yeah.
So.
But you multiply that by 5, and there's a house.
Yeah.
That a house was 5 times the cost of a car.
Okay. Well, which is one way to look at it. Yeah.
Yeah. Anyway. Okay.
Depending on where you are in the country, that could be the case.
Sure. Now. Yeah. I mean, you're buying a $90,000 pickup truck, and depending on where you live, if you multiply that by 5, you can buy a house.
Yeah. So you have to have a place to live, and why make somebody else's mortgage?
Yeah.
And I took that house and I lived in it for 4 years, and sold it for $65,000.
You did good. So you tripled your money in 3 years.
Over tripled my money in 4 years, and that was off to the races for me. I said, "Oh man, this is houses. This is the way to go." So and then basically I moved. And
I mean that's life changing, to triple your money like that.
Yeah, and I paid back the loan to my parents. And then I just took that money and moved to the house.
I mean, if you think about it, right? So go from when did you buy the house? How old were you?
21.
Okay, so 21
to 25.
But hold on, just stay at 21 for a second. At 21, you're basically at zero, right?
Right.
And so you're at zero.
Yeah.
And 5 years later,
you got $6,500. So
65 grand in your pocket.
Yeah, exactly.
That's a big fucking difference.
Yeah.
That's a fucking massive difference.
Yeah, and you can go buy a bunch of weed with that, or a bunch of beer, or if you want to, but no, I said no. I thought I wish I still had that house, just like every car I ever owned. I wish I had that house. That would have made a great rental.
Yeah,
1,000 square
feet. You
would
would have kept it.
2,000 square feet, 2 bedrooms. It's in Pasadena.
Yeah, it would have rented out all day.
No, it was right down by Target.
Mm-hmm.
Just below Colorado there, 2 blocks below Colorado. And I could have done that, but I took all the money and just moved it from there to 1713 Pasadena Glen. And that was basically, the house wasn't any better that I bought. In fact, it was a shittier house, but a better neighborhood.
Mm-hmm.
It just got me into a better neighborhood community. So, and it came with a vacant lot.
Oh, the price did?
The house did. That house, that house came with the lot.
Yeah.
That's in the house, and we're in the house.
Yeah.
That was on that vacant lot.
I didn't realize that. I thought you ended up buying that lot separately.
No.
Oh, so that was it. And then you had to split the lot.
No, there was already 2 separate parcels.
Oh.
Okay. Yeah, I didn't have to split the lot. All I had to do was pull the permit.
Okay.
How did you have this house lined up to buy before you sold your original house?
Yeah.
So you essentially said, I'm going to buy this, sell this one, and buy this one. It was kind of a
back to back
1-2 deal.
The timing was very tight.
Yeah, I did. The timing was tight. Yeah. Mm-hmm. So it was, yeah. And
that was 71 or 2?
No.
What year was that?
That was 78.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, okay.
Because they had 4 years prior in the other house. So,
At what point had you met Gala? Where was this after you
Right
moved?
then, right about just before I moved.
But you were dating somebody else in that other house.
I was dating a lot of people.
You were pimping or what, dude?
Trying to.
How'd that work out?
No, I had a.
You were engaged.
I was engaged.
Yeah.
A year.
What was her?
A year earlier?
What was her name?
Leanne.
Was she hot?
She looked hot.
All right. Well, that's that was my question. Did she look hot? Yeah, she looked.
Yeah,
hot.
she was a tall, natural blonde.
Okay, here you go.
Then tall. She could have used more weight on her chest. But we could have fixed that later.
And how long did you date Leanne for?
Over a year.
Okay.
And
you took
actually
you introduced her to the family in Oregon.
I did.
Yeah. So you made a trip up there.
See, somebody's been telling stories.
Kurt, your brother Kurt told me that.
Oh, okay. Yeah, she was 19 when I met her.
Okay.
And basically, she was a little bit immature.
And you were what, 25 at the time?
No. 23.
Okay, 23. Okay. You're 23, she's 19.
Yeah.
Okay, 4-year difference.
She was I don't know whether immature, but she was
naive.
I don't know whether that's trying to think what the best term is. She was a reasonably sensitive. She's a sensitive person.
Okay.
And so I was a little bit
abrasive.
No, but she wasn't accustomed to. I don't know, wouldn't call it over the top, but I mean, arguments bothered her.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Arguments. I grew up in a household that argued.
Yeah.
We argued about everything.
Right.
No, and nobody took it personal.
Right.
You're just a fucking asshole, and I'm right. And you're the asshole, and you're wrong, and I'm right. And that wasn't her thing.
Okay,
so,
got it.
And so
so you guys had a rub there.
Yeah, that and it was, and I thought that I don't know, maybe I was, at least to her, I think I was the most serious relationship she'd been in. And I think she was the driving force to get married. I would have waited.
Okay.
It taught me a lesson.
Okay. Got it.
That, because and fortunately we hadn't been together long enough, and we grew apart.
Sure.
During the course of going towards marriage.
Right.
And so and it was a good thing. It wasn't something that I wanted, really, because I liked her.
Sure.
But and it was the best for both of us.
Okay, got it.
And she actually moved on before I did. So
yeah.
So, and that was probably good for her. But anyway, I was just dating other people. That's all. Prior to her, and I had just coming out of high school, I had a long-term relationship with an Arcadia High School girl, a couple years younger than me.
Okay.
I had just graduated, and I was going to PCC, and she was a junior.
Okay. Yeah.
At Arcadia High School.
Yeah.
So, anyway, and then just regular dating,
Mark, do you know how old were your parents when they got married?
My mom, I think, was 21, and my dad was 28.
Okay.
My dad was in the Army, and he was stationed outside of Chicago before going over to Europe during World War II. And the guys in the service were invited by her college, my mom's college, to come up for a dance. And that's where they met. So my mom's a war bride.
You. I'll turn his mic off. Yeah, when you guys got married.
27, and she would be like 24.
I know. Yeah, me and Kyle had talked about this. It seemed like back then, the average age to get married was about 20, 21.
I think it depended on where you lived.
Yeah.
The environment you lived in. I think the Midwest got married younger. The West Coast got married a little bit older. We didn't get married. It wasn't like Gail and I were the oldest people to not be married.
Yeah.
All our friends got married approximately about right in the same time, age group, someplace mid to late 20s. And I think that trend was happening, earlier on. People got married earlier.
It must be, I think the South too. Maybe the South is more.
Hey, I have an open beer in there, one of those. You want to read your book? Yeah. Yeah, there's two open cans in there. One's a green can on the far left. No, leave this here. I'm gonna need it.
Kyle, when you turn that mic off, it turns mine off. No, I turned it on, but it's because they're connected. Yeah, you're good.
Yeah, I think the whole society got married a little earlier, and that was in the process of changing.
Yeah, it seemed like the South. Maybe the South is what I've heard too.
Oh, yeah.
They're very young.
Yeah, 14.
I think my aunt was 19 when she got married.
Oh, well, when I married my cousin, she was 14.
I didn't say that.
No, I did. Anyway, and then basically, I started just when I was getting ready to move. That's when I started dating Gayla, and then she actually helped me move.
That's a good deal.
Oh, hey, that's a great deal. Yeah, that's how you know you got a good woman.
She said, "I'll help you move. You got a house. I'll move into the house with you."
Yeah. Oh, that was an unusual thing. Was when I bought the first house. None of my friends had houses. I was the first person that had a house, and that really destroyed my private, my life, buying a house, because suddenly your
social life. It destroyed
my
your
social life.
No, it didn't destroy your life. It destroyed your social life.
Exactly. And what happened was, I couldn't. Now I was making payments on this place and maintaining this place, and I didn't have a great job. And prior to that, I was living at home, and I had lots of money. So now I don't have any money. And so all my friends, they're out, at the bar drinking, going on dates and going out to dinner and stuff. And
being kids.
Well, being young adults.
Yeah.
Which is what you're supposed to do. And basically I'm at home eating, I'm cooking for myself. So, it took kind of the fun. It took, I had to really be careful how I spent, money socializing. I had a dirt bike that I bought when I was in the Army. I had a Husqvarna. And we used to go out to the desert, a group of us, half a dozen of us. We used to go out, Friday nights, go up to out in the desert. And
so Tim, like the desert would be like an hour and a half from where we where we grew up, so it was a quick trip to get out, and you could ride anywhere.
Yeah, and we used to. It was there was anyway. We used to do that, and as soon as I bought that house, I couldn't afford to go out to the desert, and you still got to eat, but it's gas money to get there. You got to maintain that motorcycle. And so
were you working?
I ended up selling that motorcycle because I just wasn't using it.
Were you working weekends at that time, or you just working Monday through Friday?
No, I was Monday through Friday.
Yeah.
And where did I learn how to do shit? Just doing it. If nothing else, I knew what it was supposed to look like, and so I would work on it until it looked like that.
Yeah.
And I did that work for my dad, so I had basic knowledge, but nothing sophisticated.
When did you start painting people's houses? You making money on the side painting houses when you were young too, right?
I did side work, yeah. Yeah, I painted other people's houses. I painted inside houses. I worked.
How old were you when you started doing that?
Probably when I started working for other people. Probably when I moved into the Glen.
Okay.
Pretty much when I moved in there. I worked in about every other house at the south end of the Glen over, the first 20 years of living there.
Yeah.
I did all kinds of shit for people, all the neighbors.
Yeah.
I could explain all that, probably half of them.
Yeah, but I remember
between Old Grove Road and over here, and
I remember you telling a story about a house like in Sierra Madre that you spent weeks with a sander on the outside of the house.
Oh, that was Monrovia.
In Monrovia.
What happened was I painted a house in Monrovia. It was and I painted it with an oil-based product, and it was 100 frickin' degrees.
And you want to get the job done today?
No, it was 100 degrees, and I sprayed it with an airline. And when I walked off that job, it looked great. And it was a number of days when it was hot. And I got a call, and I thought all I had to do, I was going to do the trim on the windows.
Uh-huh.
And I probably was happened to be, I sprayed it on a Friday. And pulled all the masking off all the windows and the doors and everything, and there was a tenant in there, and he was actually a painter. He wanted that job, and he came out, and we had a beer together, and he says, "Hey, it looks great, man." He said, and I said, "Well, thank you." I said, he said, "It's too bad you didn't get the job. Wouldn't have to drive too far." And he says, "Hey, that's life." He says, "You must be doing it cheaper than I was going to do it for." I said, "Well, I don't know what you were going to do it for, but I'm happy." And he says, "Yeah." He says, "It looks good." And I left. And he called me up on Monday. And he says, "Hey, Mark, I got some bad news." He says, "This is all orange peeled on you." I go, "What are you talking about?" And he says, "It's all wrinkled up." And he says, "I think it was too hot to spray that kind of a product." And this is a painter talking to me.
Mm-hmm.
So I went over there, and sure enough, it all got it was orange peel surface, on it all.
It all crinkled up.
Yeah, because it was couple of 100-degree days, and it dried too fast. Is what happened. The surface dried, and it was still wet underneath. It skinned off really quick, and Jesus. And so I talked to the owner, and I said, "This is what's going to happen." I said, "We're going to have to wait a couple of months minimum for this to completely cure." And I said, "I'm going to sand this whole place and repaint it." And he says, "Yeah." He says, "I hate to see you do it, but," he says, "life's a bitch." So I actually involved the paint store. Took him a sample and told him what happened. And I said, "Hey, on the can there, it doesn't say
don't paint it at 100
degrees." And he says, and they said, okay, fine. So he says, I'll give you all free material. But he says, I can't do anything for you on the labor. He says, you're going to have to eat it.
Yeah.
But he says, here's 10 gallons of paint, to repaint it. And so 2 weeks sanding that house with a palm sander. That's 4-inch palm sander. Because of the siding it was the shiplap siding. And it's about this wide. So you just run the sander across there. I went through paper. I wore out that sander. It was a Makita sander, and they were the best one. And I actually ended up buying a new sander just before I finished that job. Wore that son of a bitch out 8 hours a day about on the palm sander. But and then the owner of the house says, and by the way, I'm going to change the color. This is too dark. And I said, well, I guess you're lucky I had to sand all this. So I ended up painting that house a different color. A little bit lighter gray than when I finished painting that house, it looked like a battleship the first time. It was way too dark, but the customer's always right. But he cut it in half, so he ended up with a pretty nice. I said, you pretty much, because all I did was knock off. I didn't take the whole coat off.
Right.
I just knocked off the orange peel.
Mm-hmm.
I said, well, you got a hell of a paint job now. You got 2 coats for the price of 1.
Yeah.
So.
Okay. What year do you think you were doing that to that house?
I don't know, 1980, something like that.
Okay, so all right. All right, so we never jumped into when you started trucking.
I started trucking. That's when I started doing side jobs because
you had time.
I had time. I didn't have work every day, or I'd have short days, and I filled up short days with side jobs. Trucking in 77.
Okay.
End of 77. Friend of mine's dad was the vice president of El Rancho Markets. And they were selling light duty semi. And in the Army, I was a truck driver. And so that's when I said, well, shit, I'll buy that thing. Because he made a hell of a deal. $600.
Okay.
For a semi. It was a Ford. It was a 62 Ford, like F600 or F650 semi. And it was made to haul one short trailer.
A gasoline truck.
No, a gas truck, yeah, not diesel.
Yeah.
It was a 500 and some cubic inch V8.
Yeah.
And I went, and that was my first truck.
Okay.
I gave it a paint job. And then I started hauling empty containers out of the harbor. Went to work for a company doing that.
Okay.
Because this was a light duty truck. It couldn't haul heavy loads.
Right.
So I was hauling empty containers between the harbor and the railroad.
Okay.
And then they'd go back on the ship, and then they'd go back to China.
Or wherever the hell they were.
Yeah, I didn't haul. But I didn't haul loaded container. I did that for a year.
Okay.
You're doing this with your own truck?
Yes.
Owner operator?
Yeah, I was an owner operator.
Full time, basically?
I was getting paid from the harbor in, San Pedro in Los Angeles up into downtown Los Angeles to the railroad yard, $35.
Where was the rail yard?
Rail yard, East LA.
Okay, so
along the river.
You don't have to go very far.
I was happy.
So you're just shuttling these fucking things.
If I made 3 or 4 rounds a day, I was happy.
Yeah.
And if I couldn't do that, it got to a point where that if for whatever reason I got smart, that if I wasn't having a good day by about 11 o'clock or noon, I'd go home.
Okay.
Call it quits and say, I quit while I'm ahead. I'm not having a good day. I made $50 or $70, but I used to work some weekends too. We used to shuttle a lot of stuff on weekends, and that's how you beat the traffic.
Yeah.
And some guys work nights to beat the traffic.
Was that what would make it a bad day? Traffic's bad and you're just not getting many moves.
This is LA. Yeah. And sometimes you'd get backed up at the harbor. You get lined up, or you get wasn't so bad at the railroad, but
because you're getting paid $35, whether it takes you 1 hour or 5.
Right.
So, yeah.
Some guys would run containers all night, get a whole half a dozen of them or something down at the harbor area, and then at about 6 or 7 in the morning, start taking them into the harbor. And then that's all they did was just go back, because they had the container close by parked. And then they just turn them in, and then they'd have the rest of the day to themselves, and then they would go to work at about 8 or 9 o'clock at night and start all over.
Now, were they paying you cash? Will they give you a check? Check.
Yeah.
So there's certain receiving hours. These guys are just staging them all and then bringing them in when the harbor.
Well, at that time, the harbor was open like 7 to 4, something like that. It's all longshoremen, and they only work so fast. It don't make any difference how much work they get done, because there's always tomorrow. So.
And I guess we skipped over the Army. What license do you have now? This is a license you got in the Army, a commercial license?
Well, I didn't get the commercial. Their licensing is completely different. Federal to drive.
So you don't even need
military.
You don't need a commercial license with the military?
No, as long as it's a commercial vehicle.
Mm-hmm.
But after I got out of the Army, that's when I got a commercial license for, to drive trucks in California.
What do you have an A license? Is that what you have or had?
It's called a Class 1. Right now it's suspended because I haven't done my. Every 2 years you have to do a physical, and this last go around I didn't do it, but I kept it up until a couple of years ago. So it still says I can drive trucks,
but you can't.
But if they look hard enough, or if it shows up, if I get pulled over and it shows up on my, in the record, that if the guy's a smart cop, he'll see it.
Mm-hmm.
That I haven't done that. And that's mostly a lot of it has to do with it. The most important thing they do is drug testing. And they're looking for drugs, diabetes. If you
move in a little bit.
Drugs, diabetes, and your vision.
Mm-hmm.
That's what they're checking for. So anyway.
So mostly just safety stuff.
Yeah, that's what it's all about.
What truck did you, after you're not driving from the shipyard anymore, what have you bought in it?
I needed a heavier duty truck to haul loads, so that's when I bought the GMC.
Mm-hmm.
67 GMC to haul heavier loads. And I had that for 4 years. And then I bought the yellow truck, which is the white. I drove that one for 10 years. And then I bought the Mac.
Are you ever doing overnight trucking, or you're always home every night?
Every night I was home.
Did you ever do any, like not even 1 or 2 trips? You went to Arizona one time.
I went to Arizona like 3 times.
Okay. Did you spend the night there?
No.
You came home that day?
Went to Parker, Arizona a couple of times, and then I went to Kingman, Arizona once. All of it's border town.
Yeah.
One long day. I'd get home at night.
Yeah.
Was the log pretty similar then? Could you not drive more than 12 hours?
Yeah, everything is the same. Well, yeah, there's more restriction now about how you spend your time. And you have to log it a lot more specifically of what you're doing during the course of the day. But you can drive a certain amount of hours. You call it driving time, and then on duty time, which is on duty but not driving, like loading and unloading or waiting. See, and that's the hardest part. It's a total of 16 hours. You can drive like 11 or 12. But if you're waiting, that will eat into, if you're waiting a long time for a load, like let's say you end up waiting 6 hours, that eats into your driving time. So
could you sleep? Could you record any of that as sleep time?
I didn't have a sleeper.
Yep.
But, out of a 24-hour period, you have to record 8 hours of sleep.
Mm-hmm.
Off-duty time.
Yep.
Off-duty time. There's nobody making sure you're sleeping. But you were off-duty for those eight hours. So
I knew a guy when I was a teenager, and he hauled cattle, potbelly, and his wife had a license, and
They'd team up.
Well, he did most of the driving, but he could put her in. He could log her
into the machine.
She did drive, but I think it was more rare. They wanted to spend their life together on the road, and
she's just sitting there next to her.
Yeah, that's kind of how they did it, which is pretty dangerous and illegal, but
yeah,
that's what they did.
Yeah, well, they probably weren't alone.
Yeah.
A lot of people pulling some shit. Yeah, well, it's pretty restrictive now. It's electronic logs. You just have to write it down, and it had to be current. You get in trouble if you were behind on your log. But
now it's all in a machine.
And you have to. Oh yeah, now it's all electronic, and you have to stop. I mean, you have to stop and stretch technically. You get out of the truck after a few hours, and it's all logged. The truck logs it, and so it's a lot harder to get away with anything.
Because you shut the truck off.
I mean, some guys, they never shut the truck off. Well, I mean, they'd pee in a bottle, and you drive, the entire length of time. Now, a lot of places, when you cross scales, they know when you cross scales. They know if you're speeding. Yeah. If you go between one scale and another, and you get there too soon, they know you're speeding.
Mm-hmm.
At the next scale.
Sure.
There's some quail right there.
Oh yeah.
Going underneath the tank.
Yeah.
Underneath the propane tank. Oh, he's going after him. But anyway.
So you met Gala when you're 24, 25, somewhere around there?
Yeah. Yep. No, actually I knew her in high school. I was a senior and she was a sophomore. Because high school was 3 years then. But we didn't date then. We didn't date until afterwards. That's a long time out of high school.
Yeah.
But we traveled in the same circle of friends.
So you knew of each other?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. We used to go, a bunch of us used to go skiing and stuff like that. I don't ever remember skiing with her, but there were a bunch of the same guys. We used to go up to Big Bear, go skiing.
Uh-huh.
Stuff like that. And so, but, yep.
So you bought this house, but then did you build a couple more on that same street?
Yeah. Yeah, well, the house came with a lot. The house we live in now, down there, I built and rented it out for 35 years. And then I bought the lot across the street, and we lived there for 35 years. In that, we actually lived in that house. I built that house first. That's where these guys grew up.
Okay.
And then just recently, I sold that house in 2020 and moved into the rental across the street. So now that is our primary residence now.
And you've got one more rental there too now?
No,
or no.
I sold that the first place I sold in 2018, the small rental, and I bought this.
Okay.
Took all the money, added $12,000 to it, and I bought this. I sold a 1,350 square foot small 3-bedroom
that you bought for 65 grand.
that I bought for 62.5 or 63.5. Sold it for $685,000.
How many years later?
78, 88, 98, 2008, 40 years. 40 years later, for $685,000, but I had to pay the realtor out of that. He got his commission, and I ended up netting $640,000 after commissions and escrow, and I bought this place, 3,750 square feet. So 1,300 square feet, shitty little rental. And then we got this. And I added 12,000 to that 640. We got this for 650. So I thought that was a good trade-off.
Yeah, it was quite the trade.
And the view's a lot better.
Yeah.
Too.
Yeah. The whole thing's better.
Yeah.
You just had to wait for it.
And if I hadn't have sold that rental, we wouldn't be sitting here doing this podcast.
That's true. That's true.
And the boat wouldn't be sitting down at the dock. By the way, you guys got to go down and cover it up.
Yeah, we will.
We do.
Because it rains a lot at night here. And you never know when it's going to do that.
Right.
So anyway.
So Tim's got some questions about getting a construction loan and how do you pay off a construction loan? Yeah, the kind of the trickery of doing the finances of like pay off a construction loan while you're dumping a bunch of money into it. Right?
Oh,
while you're
how you mean how that runs through the course of the job?
Yeah. So you decided to go build another house and you lived in the house. So you're paying a mortgage.
Okay, I'll tell you.
You're paying a mortgage and you got to go out and build another house.
I want to build a house.
Yeah.
Okay. So I got this lot. And so the first thing I did,
So you paid cash for the lot.
Yeah, that lot. Yeah, no, I did not. The guy wanted me to make payments to him. $7,000 at 7% interest.
Okay. Over how many years? How long did it take to pay off the
$7,000? He wanted to stretch out over 4 years.
Okay.
And then he changed his mind, but that is not either here nor there. So in the meantime, I'm planning on. Well, I'm going to build a house on that. So I know you can't. Most of the time, for a conventional construction loan, you have to own the lot outright. So I knew I was going to have to buy him out. So anyway, and I needed to draw some plans. So I had some plans drawn up. I did the research on the lot and made sure it was buildable, and got ready to, and then put the plans through plan check. And about that time, I contacted the guy that I was making payments to. Man, I was paying him like, I don't know, $70 a month or something, some bullshit thing like that. And I said, hey, is there any chance I could pay you off early? And he says, no problem. He says, I was going to talk to you about that. He says, I would just like to
be done with it.
Be done with it. And I said, perfect. So I paid him off. And then about the time I'm dealing with the county, I go to the Bank of America, who I bank with, and I said, "Hey, I want to get a construction loan." And they said, "Sure, no problem. But you'll need a general contractor because you're not a general contractor. You'll need somebody that's going to be in charge of that." So I had a friend who was a general contractor, and I said, "Hey, Mike, can you put your name on my loan?" I said, "You're going to do the concrete work anyway, so could you do me a favor?" He said, "Sure." So he went to the bank with me, and basically, while I signed the loan papers, he signed the paperwork so that they knew he was going to be the general contractor. He had to sign every page of the blueprint. He had to put his signature on there and his contractor number. So anyway, that's how I got the loan.
So they just want to know that a licensed contractor is doing what they're financing you for, doing the work.
Yeah, that's who they want to. That's who they want to think's doing the work.
Yeah.
In my case, that general contractor only did the concrete work. So anyway,
was it a challenge to get them to approve your loan based on what you made and what you had saved and all that? Credit score.
I don't recall it being a challenge.
Okay, so it was kind of like, yeah, I'm going to build it for this. Yeah, we'll give you $100,000.
So he wanted less money. He wanted less money, to borrow less money than they were willing to loan him. They said, "You can't possibly build a house for that much money, so we're going to make you borrow."
Okay. I'll elaborate on that. I wanted to do it. I was going to do a bunch of work myself.
Yeah, they didn't know that.
They didn't know.
Especially because you just lied to them and had your general contractor sign all the paperwork.
Right. And so I wanted $135,000, and they said, "You can't build that for that." They said that you're gonna have to borrow at least 150. So I said, "Okay." So anyway, I got my loan set up, and the way the loan works is they don't give you 150 grand and you put it in the bank and then you spend it as needed. The way they do it is they pay you in progress increments.
They give you like 10 grand at a time.
What they do is what they do is whatever the foundation costs, you show them what you have under contract. Whatever the framing costs for the materials, the framing materials, they want to see an invoice. And then once like foundation completed, they pay out that they'll give you the money for that. So now let's just say that's 10 grand. Okay, so now you have a monthly payment on 10 grand. Okay, now you're into the framing aspect of it. You have the framing materials on site. Once they're on site, they'll pay you for the framing materials. Once they'll give you a progress for first floor completed, second floor completed, in the framing stage, roof completed.
Yeah, so you're paying on 10 grand, right, and then 20 grand, and then 30 grand. Well, it keeps building,
right? Or whatever the framer charge you,
right.
And so, and then once the framer's done, then they'll pay for the framing, the labor on the framing, and then the drywall's next, and then you have the electrical, the rough in electrical. They'll pay you for that, and the rough plumbing in. They'll pay you for that. The roof material, the roofing job.
And your loan, pay you for that. Your loan amount keeps growing every month.
Your loan amount is growing, and so there's an incentive to get this thing done as efficiently and as soon as possible. Because once you get to the end of the project, you're paying on the 150 grand. Now that doesn't sound like a lot of money now, but then when you're already got a mortgage on the house you're living in, and you're trying to drive a truck and feed your family, and then now you got to make payments on, and the money, you can't use the money they're giving you because you got to give that money to the people that worked for you or supplied the materials. So anyway, then when you're all done and you get your job completed, final,
you hurry up and move in.
Well, if you're going to live in it,
Yeah.
or if you want somebody to live in it, and you get approval you get your occupancy inspection.
Yeah.
And you're going to put a renter in there or something like that. Then when you're all done with your construction loan, then you convert it to a conventional loan.
And that interest rate is a lot better generally.
Yeah.
It wasn't horrible. I don't know what the construction loan is.
It's usually a couple points lower. So
Well,
like right now, a
that's
construction loan would be like 10%, and a regular loan would be like 7 or 6.5.
Well, I don't think it was that bad. So anyway, I think might have been.
So it's usually like 2%.
Okay,
points.
2. Okay, 2. So if it's 7 now, it would be 9. But anyway, so so I just converted it into with B of A. It's just simply more paper. You go in and you close out one loan and open another. And I did that a couple of times with B of A to build 2 houses.
Did you guys move into this first one you built, or that?
Yes. Yeah, we moved across the street, and I moved a renter into the small house. Yeah, because our family was growing, and we went from that 1,350 square foot house to 2,500. We went from 2 bathrooms to 4 baths. Well, that was like going to the Taj Mahal, brand new house.
And how old are you when you, I guess, first have Chase?
Do what?
When did you first? Chase was your first. How old were you when you guys had him?
He was an infant when I built that first house. I was 30 or 31 years old when I built that house.
And then you guys moved into that with Chase. And is Cole not born yet, or no?
It's about, I think Cole was born in the new house.
Okay.
Within a year of moving into it. He was born in 1985. Yeah.
And then Kyle, how many years behind Cole are you?
A year and a half.
So you're 86, 87?
87.
Yeah. And I waited a few years to get comfortable again and take a little bit of downtime. And then in 1990, I started the next house. And even then, the rules had changed. It got the restrictions, construction. It's just it's gone on and on and on. These people that are building these houses are screaming about how
the building codes
and everything.
Yeah.
Wind, shear wall, wind strength. Panels.
Yeah.
I forget the exact term.
There's a bunch of stuff.
Bunch of shit. This isn't Florida. They don't have hurricanes here. What's this wind shear? The glass has to be, the windows have to be. That's a bunch of bullshit. But anyway.
So how did you, so you built, you ended up building the second house. And so now you got 3 homes on the same street.
Now I'm a landlord.
Okay, so how did you pay all 3 mortgages?
The renters paid all the mortgages.
Okay, but
I never took any money out of my pocket.
But you only
to make the payments.
But renters only paid for 2, like you had rent on 2 houses.
Yes.
So the rest of the money covered your mortgage.
No. I never made a dime off a rental house. While they were rental homes.
I'm saying you have 3 mortgages to pay.
I had 3 mortgages to pay, and the 2 mortgages on the rental homes were paid by the renters.
Right.
And there was never enough where I could skim money off for my own personal use. All of it was basically went to make the payments, the taxes, the maintenance on the homes, and the mortgage.
Yeah.
So,
So the renters covered the other 2 mortgages. You covered your own.
And I covered my own, exactly.
Yeah.
And then trucking fed the family.
Yeah.
Because I'm not making any money as a landlord. all the money that like the first house to buy this, I never. The money just went from that house to this house.
Yeah.
And I had to add $12,000 to it. I can't remember the hell what 12. Well, by that time I was making more money, and I was able to have a savings account. We never had a savings account from 1980 to the day you graduated from high school. We had no savings account. We had checking account.
You didn't have you had no retirement.
Well, I'll tell you, no retirement whatsoever.
Did that make you nervous? I mean,
no.
I was
comfortable with that. This is what I had. I had
no health insurance.
I had a savings. I had a checking account.
You're either stupid or you got a pair of balls on you, bud.
No,
I'm pretty sure you're stupid.
I had. We had a checking account, and I had accounts payable that people owed me money for trucking. So I had about up to 2 months. You could call it a savings account because those people owed me.
Yeah, it was backlogged.
I was backlogged for.
They owed you from 60 days ago.
Some people paid me.
That's not a savings account.
Some people paid me in 30 days.
Yeah, that's not a savings account.
I know it. I didn't. I'm just telling you. If I had lost my job or got injured, I had about 60 days to get well.
Yeah, if they
and I taking.
See where this logic came from, Tim?
I had a equity loan that I had established mostly for my trucking business, and I could take a second out on the house for up to $100,000
if you wanted to.
If I wanted.
Yeah.
Now I did that once.
You just took a few $1,000 out or something?
No, you want to know what I did? I bought that red Suburban.
Okay.
That 95 red Suburban.
Yep.
The mid 90s were not good to us.
Yeah, so you took a loan
Trucking was a mofo.
But that was a company vehicle.
The Suburban?
I'm pretty sure it was a company vehicle.
That Suburban in the garage right now is a company vehicle. It's Scootco.
Right.
It was bought and paid for by the trucking company.
Okay, yeah. So you borrowed the money off the house.
I borrowed
off the equity of the house.
I paid cash for that car with money I borrowed on that, and I took the second out.
That's an interesting way to think about that. I paid fat cash for the car off of money I borrowed.
Well,
that's a little tricky.
Okay, but you got to remember that the interest rate was a lot lower on that second than a car loan.
Yeah. It's probably half or more.
I don't remember.
It's probably half.
I don't remember
car loans.
But if you were going to have to borrow the money, you didn't.
Yeah, okay.
It was better to do it.
Yeah.
On the second on the house than the car loan.
Well, and the house had no risk in the equity in the house was secure.
Mm-hmm.
The house wasn't gonna.
Mm-hmm.
It's not like you were upside down in the house.
Right.
Okay.
But I also thought I would never do that again because.
Well, in a sense, you saved probably 3 or 4%.
Yeah, but
interest.
It takes forever to pay off that second. You know, I took out. It was $38,000.
That Suburban cost $38,000.
Yeah.
The red one.
Yeah.
That's a lot of money. No, there's no way that cost Suburban cost.
No. Hold it. No.
Maybe
that one was 15. That one was 38. Yeah, the white one is 38.
The red one would have been at 20. Or
no, it was like 32.
No, it's a fucking expensive car. Back then,
those were expensive cars.
I guess they're probably $100,000 now. Suburban.
You're damn close. Yeah.
Yeah, Suburban's probably $100,000 now.
70 probably.
At least. Okay. Anyway, all right.
So.
Okay. So So you took a loan out on the house.
To get that car, because we needed that Bronco. We wore that thing out.
Yeah.
That thing was beat.
So my dad bought these Suburbans here at Dave Smith in Idaho, and then he'd drive them back. Why would he do that, Tim?
Because the tax is better here. Yeah, good.
Well, I would register at my brother's house in Oregon, and they don't have any sales tax.
Yeah.
So I'd buy them here, and they would take care of the registration. They would file for the registration at the dealership, and I would take the new car with the new plates. And they thought I was heading for Oregon, and I was actually heading for Southern California. And then when the new plates showed up, Kurt would mail them.
I mean, on $38,000, that's almost $4,000 in savings. On 38.
Well,
grand.
nowadays, it's over 10% on sales tax.
Yeah.
And another thing is at that time it was only $30 a year to register a car in Oregon too. Or in California, that thing would have cost me $600-700 a year. In Oregon, it was $30. So there was it makes a lot of this stuff. I say the government makes criminals out of us. It makes you think in a criminal way. How can I keep from paying these taxes?
Right.
And why do you think people cheat on their income tax?
Mm-hmm.
Because they think they're paying too fucking much.
Yeah.
And they don't know where the hell it's going and what they're doing with it anyway.
Yeah, they're probably not happy with what Joe's doing with it.
Right. Doesn't matter really who.
Well, wait a minute here. Hey, Joe, just take that money and give it to all those stupid fucks that took out those college loans, and they're 50. I saw a person who was interviewed, and he was, or he, I saw two of them, a woman and a guy. They were in their 50s,
going back to college.
No, and they still owed $150,000 on their college loans. And you haven't been in college since you were 22 years old, and you never paid off that college loan. I mean, well, Joe will take care of that for you now.
Yeah. Okay, so
when did you pay off the first mortgage on one of those houses?
The old house had been paid off for a long time.
Depending on what the mortgage rates were, there were times where I would refinance them because it was a good idea. Because their interest rates over those years was constantly slowly going down. This is what I'm telling you. They go up fast, they go down slow. And on another subject that they don't think, this is the Wall Street Journal talking, and you were saying, you were wondering, when the interest rates on a home will be back down to 5%. They think it'll be in the 6% range at the end of 2025. And that's 6%. It's not going to be 5%. It'll be about 2 more years before that happens. So that was anyway. So yeah, I've refinanced when it was smart.
But then you go back to a 30-year loan?
No. Sometimes I did 15.
Okay, so you'd lengthen your loan again, but you'd bring the rate down.
No, I would never. I might be 10 years into the loan.
Okay.
Or 5 years into the loan.
Okay.
And if I could save a couple percent if you can save a percentage point, there's the advantage to doing it. Because of there are fees, there are loan origination fees, points that you pay. So if you can save a percentage point, it's good to just. And so there was a few times, it was like every couple of years I was changing, I was getting a different loan. And then they give you the option of a 15 or a 30-year loan on a conventional loan, and I'm looking at it and I'm just figuring, well, what can I pay? And if I can make the payments, even if it does kind of cramp my style, if I can make the payments at 15, I'd go with that. If I couldn't, then I'd go back with a 30-year.
So, you probably get a lower rate, shorter term.
Yeah. You save about 0.5% on a 15-year, and it's a few $100 a month. And another way to do it is get the 30-year. This is even a better idea. Get the 30-year and pay it a 15-year rate. In other words,
double your payment.
30-year. Well, you don't. It's not even double. It's not even close to double. It's like time and a half. If you're paying $1,000 for a 30-year loan, it's not $2,000. No. If you're, it's not $2,000 for a 15-year loan. It's like $1,500.
Yeah, I see what you're saying.
Yeah, because of
it's not a 1-for-1 ratio.
Well, you're not holding their money for 15 more years.
Right.
Yeah. That thing turned off. No internet connection.